Hey everybody, I just got back from a road trip from the Leadville, Twin Lakes, Colorado area. I've imported this photograph and I want to walk you guys through the editing process. It's a little underexposed and with a little bit of a neutral color palette. Shot that way on purpose so that it retains the most detail. And now we're going to get some of that back, so let's hop right into it. First thing I want to do is take my exposure up. Also want to bump up my contrast and take my highlights down, get back some of that detail in the sky especially, and then get back some of that detail in the shadows by bringing that slider to the right. And already we see a vastly improved image, but there's still several more things we can do to it here. One of the next things I want to do is work on these mountains. That's the main focal point of the image. And there was a little bit of haze in the sky when I shot it. So we're going to try and correct that as much as we can. I'm going to grab a local adjustment brush and then select Show Selected Mask Overlay, which is going to give us an idea of where we're working as we paint this in here. And I'm just going to be real careful painting in my mountains. And down here I have Auto Mask selected. And that's going to, as long as I keep my crosshairs on similar colored and contrast pixels, it won't bleed over into the sky and such. So now I can turn my overlay off and get the work. My exposure slider was already a little bit to underexpose. I didn't want that, but I can reset it by double clicking. Now my value is back at 0. So I don't really like the dehaze slider. I prefer to do this with contrast. So I'm going to take my contrast up some. Just going to clean out some of that haze, but it's also going to bring in some of that blue reflected light. And I'm going to take that out by desaturating a little bit. And then I want to come up here and take my temp up just a hair, get some of that blue color off the mountains. I want to bring down my blacks and take up my whites, make it pop a little more. And then I'm going to use my clarity slider. And I'm going to go pretty far on this just to get rid of some of that haze. And there we go, the mountains are looking a lot better. I'll take the temp up just a little bit more, and I'm kind of liking that right there. Now we're going to get to work on this sky. I'm going to use another adjustment brush, make it fairly big. I still have my auto mask selected, so I can just come in here and do a quick sweep. And I'm going to set my exposure to about negative 0.09, darken the sky a little bit. Then I want to bring my blacks down and my whites up, give us a little more contrast, make it a little bit more moody. And I'm going to give it a little bit of a blue tinge there, just about negative 4. There we go, that's looking good. I'm going to move on to the bottom of the image here. I want to take a graduated filter and slide it in there. I'm going to reset my sliders to 0. And I want to warm up the bottom of this image quite a bit, about 35 there. Just going to drag this up close to the horizon line. That is looking pretty good. And I really want to bring some focus in on these railroad tracks since they're the main leading line pointing towards the mountain. So I'm going to take a radial filter. Once again, resetting my sliders. I want to come down here and make sure I got invert selected and my feather at 100%. And I'm going to drag this radial filter right in here on the tracks. And we're going to set it to the Dodge Lighten. And I want a little bit more in that, so I'm going to actually duplicate it I did that by right-clicking on the circle and selecting duplicate. And I want to warm this up a bit more as well. Make it a nice, inviting leading line going towards those mountains there. That is looking pretty good. I want to do a little more dodging with the adjustment brush. Dodge lighten. Resizing my brush with the mouse wheel. And I want to come in here and paint in some of these bushes because they're also kind of a diagonal leading line into the main focal point of the image. So I'm going to paint those in, and also want to warm those up a little bit and take the saturation up to about 20. I don't want it to look unnatural, just a nice inviting, warming, pleasing color. That's looking pretty good there. Now I'm going to do a little burning. Select an adjustment brush again, drop down menu, burn darken. And I find it usually takes it a little too far on the burning, so I'm going to take that exposure down to about negative 0.17. And I want to burn in some of this dark gravel. It's going to make the middle of the image pop a little more, the leading lines. And I'm going to burn in just a little bit of these shadows. There we go, that's looking pretty good. I actually want to bring a little more focal point to the middle of this image. So I'm going to take another gradient brush, a little bit bigger this time. I'm going to drop it in there, about like that. And I want it lighten. I'm going to warm it up just a little more again. There we go, that's pretty good. The bottom of the image is a little dark here. So I'm going to drop in another gradient filter and just brighten it up a hair, about 0.26. Now I'm going to mess with my whites and blacks just to get the image to pop a little more. I don't want to blow out any highlights or crush any blacks, but I can definitely get a little more contrast in there. And there we go. Image is looking pretty nice. I just got a couple more things to do here, really make it pop. My greens are a little faded, so I'm going to come down here to the saturation green slider. Bump it up just a little bit. About like that. And then I'm going to do a little split toning with the highlights and shadows. It's real subtle changes here. I like to start with a high saturation just to find the color that I want in the highlights. And about right there. And then drop it back till it looks natural. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the shadows. Take the saturation up and do about 15. And I'm going to find a color in the shadows that I like. Nice warm color there. And then I'm going to dial back the saturation till it looks natural. And there we go. That is looking pretty good. I'm going to take that last gradient, that last radial filter, and dial it back just a little bit. 0.9. Looks a little more natural. And I just got one more thing to do here that I saved for last, and that's removing distractions. The clone and heal tool is pretty intensive on your computer processor, so I like to save it for last so that I don't end up freezing up the program. Got a little rock or piece of trash or something here that I find distracting to the eye. I'm just going to clone that out. And then I also want to remove this tree. You know, the main point of this image is to follow the leading line of the railroad tracks. to the mountains. You get near the end of the tracks here, and you got this tree sticking out like a sore thumb. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to use the heel clone tool, and I'm just going to get this tree out of there. Now if I was going to print this image, I'd take it over in the Photoshop and I'd remove it that way. It'd do a little bit cleaner of a job. But for our purposes here, since it's so far back in the image, I think it'll be just fine. Well, there we go. We got a final image. And just to show you the before and after, I'm going to come down here and select the before and after icon. Hit Tab to hide my toolbars. And then I can press L twice to turn the lights out. And you can really see what we've done. I think you'd agree the image on the right is vastly improved. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit like and subscribe. I'll be doing more of these in the future. And you can follow us along on our adventures and see exactly how I set up to get these images when I was on location. Thanks for watching.